made contact at just a 71% clip. And I think that the operation in the box is not as aesthetically pleasing in the sense that it's a little stiff.
If you'd have told any one of the three of us, or anyone really, I would say, who coached a Division I college baseball team at the start of the season, that Texas A&M would not just be hosting, but would not make the field of 64. They were our preseason number one, the first preseason number one to not make the tournament since 91. But Jacob, they weren't just the preseason number one. I believe that you talked to 50 coaches and you asked each one of them who their preseason number one was. And there was almost universally one answer.
Yeah, I mean, we talked to 50 coaches, like you just said, many of them high major coaches. Every high major coach, and 41 of those 50 picked Texas A&M to win the national championship before the season started. Many of them didn't really even have to think about it. It was a pretty quick response, including from some coaches in the SEC who were going to face Texas A&M and whose teams probably still have a shot to go and win a national title. So yeah, it's stunning that Texas A&M is not in the postseason at this point, especially with that roster. We know based on conversations with sources that that is not only one of the most talented rosters, but it's one of the most expensive. They shelled out quite a pretty penny in NIL to be able to put together this roster, really to be able to go and kind of shove it in the face of Jim Schlossnagle after he went to rival Texas. They wanted to be able to show, hey, we're going to still be super competitive and we're going to be better than you, and fork up a whole bunch of money and resources to be able to build that kind of a roster. That obviously has failed miserably. I think injuries were certainly a factor in that, so we're not going to take away entirely from this team. But still, even with the guys that they didn't have available to them, I would argue that this is a massive disappointment, and the kind of disappointment that probably ends in a coaching search. That hasn't happened yet, so kind of an interesting situation there, the fact that there hasn't been any movement. But our expectation is that there will be a new coach in College Station next year as a byproduct of this. And the reality is you just simply can't miss the postseason at a place like Texas A&M in your first season with that kind of roster and that kind of backing.
Yeah, Jacob's sporting the landline in the background there. He didn't even get home yet. He's at the airport because he was been traveling from just coming back from the SEC tournament. So yeah, Rob, thank you. That's what they all call what we used to use, a landline. You don't see those very much anymore. So yeah. But yeah, Rob, if you want to, if you know that number, you can just call and all of a sudden we'll have a fourth. We'll have a fourth guest on the show. But the other thing about Texas A&M that I will point out that is kind of interesting is, so Jace, speaking of number ones, coming into the season, Jace LaViolette was viewed as kind of one of the top candidates to be the number one pick in the upcoming MLB draft. I've kind of started really thinking about it. He 258, 427, 575. There aren't first round picks who hit under 300 in college baseball. I wanted to know how often that happened. And so I did a little digging this weekend. I was spending time in the Baseball America archives, gathered every college first round pick from 1981 to present. And the answer is that Jace is tied for the third worst batting average in the draft year, if he is drafted in the first round, which we assume he will be, of anyone taken in the first round college hitter in basically 45 years. That kind of is that's going to have to give a lot of teams pause, because I know batting average is not the most advanced statistic out there, but it is, when you talk about college baseball players, a pretty good distillation of a player's hit tool. And the other thing that does jump out with this, I mean, this is college baseball. I know the offensive environments change from year to year, but we are in a very heavily offensive environment right now. And there are a lot of guys, there are more players who batted over 450 in their draft year who are drafted in the first round than there are who hit under 300 over the past 45 years or so. So that's going to be a number that really is a concern, especially because if you say, okay, well, what about the players who did hit under 300 in their draft year? Success rate is really much lower than it is for other college first round picks. Not surprisingly, the success rate, if you hit if you're in the top 20 batting average in your draft year, the success rate is pretty much 100%. Success rate, if you didn't hit 300 in your draft year, is much, much, much lower. Full details over at baseballamerica.com. But it is something that I think is worth kind of paying attention to. And obviously, Peter, the thing that did stand out with Jace this year is started slow, had a good kind of middle of the season, but then struggled at the end. I know he did gutsy as anything, as Uncle Ted pointed out in the comments, played in this final game with a broken finger on his hand and just said, nope, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go out there and do it. But before that, he was struggling again, a lot of strikeouts. What did you come away? What was your takeaway from Jace's season?
Yeah, so obviously playing their last game of the season on what ended up being a broken hand, a broken bone, was nothing short of remarkable and honestly heroic for the school, and showed how much he cares for his team and the program and the guys to the left and right of him. But as you alluded to, Texas A&M kind of went as Jace went. They started off slow, as did Jace. Then they picked it up in the middle of the season, as did Jace, and then they kind of fell off one final cliff towards the end of the season, and that also mimicked what Jace had done. But I think to an extent, he did what he's always done. He's flashed his double plus raw power, especially the pull side. He's really stepped on some balls. He's played a quality center field, especially for a guy his size. He's turned in above average to plus run times, which is plenty impressive given his stature of 6'6", 230. But I do question the hit tool.
Peter,
he made contact at just a 71% clip. And I think that the operation in the box is not as aesthetically pleasing in the sense that it's a little stiff and rigid and at times robotic, more so than you'd like, and it's not this kind of suave, smooth, athletic look that you see with some other guys. So I think while Jace will be the exception and still go inside the first round, I'm curious to see where exactly he slots in, because at this prize, if it was first overall, which he certainly had the case of being the first overall pick heading into this season. But now he's kind of slipped a little bit, and I'm curious if he goes in the back half of the top 10 in the early teens, or perhaps even after that 12th to 15th pick range, which to me would still be a little bit surprising, but we'll see.